Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the wild history and ultimate triumph of a true motorcycle icon. We are going to trace the incredible journey of a brand that started out as a tiny rural workshop, faced total, absolute collapse, and then somehow engineered one of the most remarkable turnarounds in industrial history to become a global powerhouse.
Think about the world of racing for a second. A winning streak of, say, 3 or 4 years? That's legendary. But 21? That number represents an absolutely impossible 21 consecutive victories at the grueling Dakar Rally, stretching all the way from 2001 to 2021. For 2 straight decades, this brand completely owned the most inhospitable and punishing off-road terrain on Earth. Honestly, no other manufacturer in the history of motorsport has achieved anything even close to this level of sustained dominance in a single event.
But this incredible stat begs a massive question. How on earth did a company that dominated the toughest race on the planet face total financial ruin just a decade earlier? To really grasp the sheer magnitude of their 21st century success, we have to unpack the near-death experience that forced them to completely reinvent themselves back in the early 1990s.
Section 1. Origins of an Orange Icon. Okay, let's flash back to the very beginning to see exactly how their DNA was formed.
So, that famous acronym, it actually stands for Kronreif and Trunkenpolz Mattighofen. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. It all started back in 1934 in a rural Austrian metalworking shop founded by Hans Trunkenpolz in the quiet town of Mattighofen. Now, initially, this business had absolutely nothing to do with motorcycles. It was just a local garage doing vehicle repairs and basic metal fabrication. The name as we know it today took shape in the early 1950s when businessman Ernst Kronreif became a partner and provided the much-needed capital to grow. Combining their surnames with their hometown gave the brand this incredibly grounded regional identity that it still proudly carries today. Now, right after World War II, Europe was absolutely desperate for cheap, practical transport. Trunkenpolz saw this opening, and by 1953, they rolled out the company's very first purpose-built motorcycle, the R100. It was a lightweight 98cc machine fitted with a Rotax engine. Simple, reliable, and exactly what people needed. But as the 1960s rolled around, competition from the big Japanese giants really intensified. This forced the company to hunt for a new niche, which eventually led to their very first off-road prototypes in 1968.
Section 2. The American Off-Road Boom. This crucial pivot toward the dirt was heavily driven by the baby boomer off-road craze and a visionary American enduro racer named John Penton.
Back then, there was this massive gap in the market. While Japanese and European brands were super focused on pushing these heavy, road-going bikes, Penton saw that riders actually needed something entirely different for the dirt. He demanded a lightweight machine specifically designed for the absolute rigors of enduro racing. He wanted something agile, tough, and built specifically for that purpose, rather than just taking a street bike and modifying it.
Fun fact, Penton actually pitched this lightweight off-road bike idea to Husqvarna first, but they completely rejected his proposal. Unfazed, he took it to the Austrian factory, which, by the way, was also making bicycles and mopeds at the time. Penton was so incredibly confident in his vision that he bet $6,000 of his own money to have the factory build prototypes to his exact specifications.
And wow, did that gamble pay off. The first Penton motorcycles hit the dirt in 1968 using modified small-capacity Sachs engines and upgraded suspension. It was a massive hit in America. Over 25,000 of these bikes were sold in the U.S. By the time the Austrian parent company completely bought out the distributorship in 1978, this entire era had permanently hardwired off-road dominance and high-performance racing straight into their corporate identity.
Section 3. Bankruptcy and a Bold Revival. Despite that early racing pedigree and all their off-road success in the 70s and 80s, the late 80s brought some harsh economic realities.
The global competition was fierce, and the situation grew so dire that in 1991, the company officially went bankrupt. The business was literally broken up into pieces and sold off. It was a really dark period, and it easily could have been the end of the line. But then, an Austrian entrepreneur named Stefan Pierer took a controlling interest in the restructured motorcycle division. Pierer realized the brand's absolute true strength was its off-road heritage, so he engineered a radical turnaround. He took this newly lean company and pivoted it entirely toward motorsport and competition. The absolute cornerstone of Pierer's entire revival strategy? A completely unapologetic, no-nonsense company philosophy, ready to race. Now, this is crucial. This wasn't just some catchy marketing slogan dreamed up in a boardroom. It was a strict engineering mandate. It meant that every single motorcycle rolling straight off the factory floor had to be capable of actual competition use without needing major modifications. It dictated building lightweight, aggressive machines with firmer suspensions and highly responsive engines, all driven directly by real factory racing data. They made zero apologies for the aggressive, edgy stance of their bikes. It was 100% by design.
Section 4. Dominating the Dakar Rally. This is where Pierre's massive bet on motorsport really exploded onto the world stage, at the ultimate proving ground.
And this brings us right back to that wild statistic we started with. They achieved an unprecedented 21-year winning streak at Dakar. Absolute legends of the sport, guys like Cyril Despres, Mark Coma, and Toby Price, proved year after year that this engineering could survive the most punishing deserts in South America and Saudi Arabia. And here's the best part. This wasn't just for trophies. These victories translated all that extreme off-road DNA directly into massive street sales. Riders everywhere wanted a piece of that championship-winning technology in their own garages.
Section 5. Expanding the global lineup. Okay, let's look at how they took that high-octane rally DNA and injected it into an enormous modern fleet, moving way beyond just the dirt.
So while totally keeping their off-road crown, they started aggressively expanding to the street. They launched the Radical Duke series, these super light, razor-sharp naked street fighters. Then came the RC series for the track-focused supersport riders, and the Adventure series, which basically blended their Dakar heritage with long-distance touring. But actually, their most strategic move might have been a 2007 partnership with Bajaj Auto in India. This move was huge and allowed them to manufacture 125 to 390cc models at massive scale, unlocking global entry-level sales and bringing their premium engineering to a whole new generation of riders.
When you look at the modern lineup today, it is just staggering. I mean, they went from a single 98cc bike back in 1953 to a massive roster. We're talking motocross champions like the 450 SXF, insanely aggressive naked bikes like the 1390 Super Duke R, which they literally and affectionately called the Beast. They've got top-tier adventure touring bikes, and they're even pioneering the future right now with brand new electric dirt bikes like the Freeride E and the Kids SXE model. The result of this crazy journey, from a tiny rural Austrian metal shop through the absolute fires of bankruptcy to this fierce racing revival, it's a true global powerhouse. Today, they are moving well over 300,000 units every single year across more than 100 countries. And they'd managed to pull all this off without ever losing that competitive, aggressive edge that makes their machines so unique in the first place. And now, with those new electric models entering the mix, it leaves us with one really fascinating question. As the entire motorcycling world embraces electric power, what extreme boundaries will that ready-to-race philosophy push next? Well, if their history tells us anything at all, they aren't just going to adapt to the future. They are going to be racing to absolutely dominate it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your eyes on the track to see whatever comes next.